How much money can you realistically expect to make from a single high-ticket dropshipping store in net profit? It's easy for me and other people on YouTube to sit here all day long and talk about revenue. Revenue's a way sexier number. It's easier to get clicks, it's easier to make thumbnails. But what actually matters is, what are you keeping from that revenue? What are you actually taking home at the end of the day to pay yourself and to provide for whoever it is you need to provide for? And that's exactly what I'm going to break down in this video. Just want to talk about kind of a few considerations here. Obviously, there's a lot of variability in this business model. There's going to be the outliers, and then there's going to be everything in between. The outliers are both negative and positive. The negative are people that don't make any money. Yes, it is possible to not make back the money that you put into this. That is an inherent risk with any business venture that anybody starts ever. And then there's the positive side of the outliers where, it's realistic for people to make $500,000 in net profit before taxes at the end of the year. Now, that's not the norm. There's a lot that exists between this side and that side, but it's definitely possible. And what I'm going to kind of talk about and break down is, what is the average across all high-ticket dropshipping businesses? What is the average when we're taking into account cost of goods sold, ad spend, shipping costs, transaction fees, all of this stuff? What is a realistic expectation in dollars per month and on an annual basis that you can take home from a single high-ticket dropshipping store? Without further ado, I will start sharing my screen and we will get into it. So I think it'll be a lot easier to kind of show you visually what we're actually looking at on a month-to-month basis for revenue, business expenses, and net profit for a high-ticket dropshipping store. So some considerations. Obviously, revenue, cost of goods sold, shipping costs, ad spend, transaction fees, and then Shopify and apps. And this is kind of going in roughly descending order of the biggest amounts. So obviously your revenue's at the top. Cost of goods sold is by far going to be the biggest expense. And cost of goods sold and shipping costs are kind of lumped into one of the same. That's how I always report it on my taxes, at least. Ad spend is going to be your next biggest cost, although it's discretionary, and we will get into how much you actually have to spend on ads, if you have to at all. Transaction fees, that is unavoidable, but it's a small percentage. Then Shopify plus apps, I put it on this slide, but it's a really negligible amount, anywhere from $50 to $100. And while it's not zero, when we're talking about $100,000 at the end of the month, it really doesn't affect a whole lot as far as your margins. But just be aware, I'm not forgetting it. It's just not a huge number, so we're not going to focus a lot on it. So our assumption is, for a clean number for us to just discuss here, is $100,000 of monthly revenue. Your question might be, is this actually reasonable to attain? The answer is yes, it is extremely reasonable to attain. It's not going to happen tomorrow if you're just getting started. For me, it took 8 months to scale to this point. For others, it goes quicker. This whole business model is a spectrum from skill level to experience level, to niches, to what have you. There's so many different variables here at play. But at the end of the day, $100,000, especially with high-ticket dropshipping, we're not talking about hundreds of transactions here. We could be talking about 20 to 40 of them over the course of 30 days. So let's talk about our first expense, cost of goods sold. So this is going to be heavily dependent on the industry and on the company. So industry, I'll give you an example of products that I've sold before that had really low margins. Sheds and carports, kind of like these outdoor structure shelters, and I'll throw like pergolas in there as well. Really low margins, anywhere from 5 to 10% gross margins, and that wasn't even taking into account shipping. So really terrible margins, but that's kind of an outlier there, although those margins do exist from company to company and from industry to industry. Then there's water pumps, pond and lake pumps specifically for me, where depending on the company, margins were all the way up to 50%. And for certain companies, they were only 10 to 15%, even though they produce the same types of products. Maybe they were manufactured differently. Maybe the material was sourced from overseas versus domestically. there's so much within the supply chain that will affect what kind of gross margins you get from your suppliers. So taking all of that into account, what's a reasonable thing? What's a reasonable margin to expect? So how I presented this actually at first, typically between 60 to 80% of revenue on average, your cost of goods sold. So let's assume 70%, which means your gross margins are 30% with your supplier. That's before shipping, that's before anything else, before transaction fees, all of that. So for a dollar amount, we're looking at $70,000 out of $100,000 that are just going straight towards cost of goods sold. And there's not really a whole lot you can do to move that number. It might so happen you get really good margins and you could be talking about $50,000 versus 70. This is just a rough average. So if we look at a pie chart, you'll see this pie chart updated as we go throughout all of the expenses to see what is remaining on our net profit. So far we have 70% of our revenue going to cost of goods sold. And so far we have a remaining 30% of potential net profit. Shipping costs. Free shipping versus paid shipping. The question is, should you offer free shipping? And the answer to that question is it's going to be up to you. I think there's a strong argument to offer it if you can afford it. If you're not going to be profitable by offering free shipping, where you have to eat that cost and it makes you unprofitable, then you shouldn't offer free shipping. If you are still profitable after offering free shipping, I think there's an argument to offer free shipping because it makes you more competitive in the marketplace. I've kind of changed my tune over the years. I've always kind of defaulted to you should absolutely offer free shipping if you can afford it. But as time has gone on and as I've had more exposure to different industries, there are some industries where people just don't expect free shipping at all. Like maybe the products are really big and heavy. At that point, like it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for companies to offer free shipping because it's a huge expense on their part. So that's going to be a judgment call. Maybe it's a flat rate shipping cost, like $300 or $200 nationwide shipping on select products or whatever the case might be. Or maybe it's an exact like shipping calculator at checkout where you'll actually give Shopify the product specs, the size, the weight, all of that, and you'll tell it the carrier that it's shipping from, and Shopify will calculate that cost and it'll charge the customer that cost at checkout. Or the simplest level is you don't charge the customer for shipping. That's something that you just have to eat when your supplier invoices you. So let's assume for this example, you were charging free shipping or you're offering free shipping. And so you have to pay shipping to your supplier. Again, totally depends on the industry, totally depends on the products. Average number is about 5 to 8% of revenue. So let's assume a clean 6.5% of your $100,000 monthly is going to go to shipping. So a dollar amount, $6,500. On our pie chart, that gives us about 24, rounded up 24% remaining of potential total net profit. Ad spend. The next few slides are going to talk about ad spend. And this is another discretionary cost, much like free shipping, whether or not you charge it. Do you have to run ads? The answer is no. Do you have to spend a single dollar ever on ads? The answer is no. Is it easier to scale really quickly with ads? Obviously, yes, because you're getting instant traffic. You're putting your products in front of people that are searching for them. But it's not required if you're not in a rush to scale this thing. Maybe your sole focus is just organically ranking over the next 6 to 12 months and getting entirely free traffic. So it's just a totally risk-free business model where you're not really even risking losing any money other than your Shopify subscription. But let's assume the vast majority of people watching this are planning to spend money on ads or currently are already spending money on ads. ROAS, return on ad spend. So this number only takes into account revenue. It does not take into account net profit because net profit is going to vary from industry to industry, company to company. This is just a term. This is an acronym that we advertisers slap on Google Ads because it's what we measure. So 10x ROAS means for every dollar I spend, I make back $10 in revenue, not net profit. And 10x is a very reasonable number to attain. It's not going to happen immediately. When you first turn on your ads, you're just not going to know, what sells. You're not going to have a lot of data in your account. You're not going to have had enough time to add a significant amount of negative keywords. You're not going to know what you should be properly bidding. You're not going to know a lot of things that you're just going to learn over the course of time. So a year from now, if you're just getting started, your ROAS is going to look a lot different from when you're just getting started. I've attained a ROAS of 3x before, 7x, all the way up to 15x on the outlier months. But I would say a clean average that optimally you should shoot for is 10x. So on $100,000, that means 10% of our cost, 10% of our revenue is coming from, or 10% of our revenue is going towards ads. So monthly dollar amount, $10,000. If I spend $10,000, I'm getting a 10x ROAS. That means $100,000 entirely attributed to paid traffic, no SEO. What that's done to our pie chart is adding that extra 10% in, it leaves a remaining 14% potential of net profit, which really is not bad. The last thing we haven't taken into account yet is transaction fees, but we'll get to that in a second. So right now, without taking anything else into account, you're not ranking at all organically. You're just spending money on ads, and you have a really good, a very realistic, but a good ROAS of 10x. That means we're looking at 14% net profit before transaction fees. Before we get to transaction fees, a couple different examples of ad spend and SEO. And what this is meant to do is to show you the power of SEO and how much more money it puts in your pocket. So again, we're going to assume a 10x ROAS. And what we're assuming here is 50% of our revenue is coming from paid ads. And the other 50% is coming from SEO. So what that means is $50,000 is coming from paid ads, $50,000 is coming from organic traffic. But we're still going to assume a 10x ROAS on that $50,000. So what that means, it's only 5% of our revenue is going towards ads. A monthly dollar amount of that is $5,000 that we are spending on ads. It's getting us $50,000 back, but we're also getting $50,000 from organic traffic. But what this does to our monthly net profit, as you can see, we've gone from 14% all the way up to 19% in total net profit. And as you can see, it just really clean math, the dollar amount that means at the end of the month is you're getting $5,000 in extra net profit that you get to keep at the end of the month. And at the end of the year, $5,000 times 12 is $60,000. That is the difference between just having a little bit of organic ranking, not a little bit, it's half of the traffic in this example, and money spent on ads. And this is just kind of the beginning of showing you the power of SEO. It's a $5,000 difference per month, assuming just $100,000 per month, $60,000 extra at the end of the year, just from that. Now let's assume the extreme case, but a very realistic case of SEO only. This is the long-term play. This isn't going to happen tomorrow. SEO takes a while to develop, but there's a lot to consider when it comes to SEO. Both from your own profitability standpoint and from actually selling your business. So once you're ranking organically for something, once you're showing up at the top 10 results, maybe you have a collection page for some high converting products that's ranking the top 10 results organically, and you're getting revenue just from that. Well, with SEO, it takes a long time to get to that point. We're talking 6 to 12 months roughly, depending on how much work you've put in, depending on if you've done it correctly. And this is something that we go extremely in depth with in our high-ticket dropshipping program, is how to do SEO for high-ticket dropshipping. If you've done it correctly, it takes a while to get there, but it takes a long time for you to stop ranking. So if we compare that to competition within Google Ads competition is volatile. You could be dominating Google Ads one day and a new competitor comes in the next day. They have a bigger budget than you. Maybe they're doing something better than you, and they're taking half of your traffic at that point. it's something that can happen overnight on the flip of a switch. But with SEO, it's a much slower turning ship, both getting there and both going away. And so A, for you, that's a lot more consistent revenue that you're getting on a monthly basis. B, your margins, as you're going to see here in a second, are going to be significantly higher. And C, when it comes to actually selling your business one day, if that's something that you're so inclined to do, it is so much easier to sell a business that is only getting traffic organically and getting revenue organically versus something that relies even a little bit on ads. Because with ad spend, with running ads, when you sell your business, yes, you're transferring the asset, you're transferring the website, all of the supplier contracts, but you're also transferring this overhead that the new buyer then has to pay for in order to maintain the level of profitability that this business gets. Not only is it overhead expense, but it's also a skill that has to be transferred to them. And so they have to know, they either have to have a team in place or they have to know themselves how to continue to run Google Ads. While a lot of Google Ads is passive, it takes adjustments over the time. And if you don't know how to do it, it's a lot less enticing to buy someone's business if you don't know how to run Google Ads, and that's how they get half of their sales or even all of their sales. So if they have a business that only organically ranks, that is such a more enticing business to buy, and that is why you can charge 20 to 50% more for something that only organically ranks. So what we're looking at the end of the month, as you can see, we have no ad spend in this pie chart, and what that has done to our remaining potential net profit is it has brought it up to 24%, and this is before transaction fees. And so comparing that to only relying on ads to only SEO, that's an extra $10,000 per month that you are now just keeping. It's the same amount of revenue, but your traffic is coming from a different place and you're not paying for it. This is visually the power of search engine optimization and what ranking organically can do for you. And again, if you want proper guidance on how to do this, we go extremely in depth. My partner, Lisa Whaley, has 20 years of SEO experience, and she lays out, this is what you do. This is what you do step by step, from on-page SEO to off-page SEO to technical SEO. So we've gone from 14% to 24%, $10,000 extra per month that you are keeping on the same amount of revenue, and that's $120,000 per year, a six-figure income on its own that you are now making simply from switching where you're getting your traffic. Again, easier said than done, but this is just to demonstrate the power of this. Finally, transaction fees. So assuming we're all using Shopify here, Shopify is the gold standard when it comes to e-commerce. And assuming we're using the basic plan, which is what the vast majority of people use, there's also the standard plan and the business plan. Your transaction fees go down to like 2.6 to 2.3 or something like that. Let's assume we're all using the basic plan. Anyone that pays with a credit card on your website, which is going to be the vast majority of transactions, it's going to be a 2.9% transaction fee. Now let's talk about PayPal. If you want my full opinions on PayPal, that's a different conversation for another time. I have a whole video on my channel where I talk about my grievances with PayPal. PayPal sucks at the end of the day. They're an awful company to work with. The problem is a lot of people use PayPal enough to where it makes sense to offer it as a checkout option on your website. As you can see here, if you have PayPal connected to your Shopify through the Shopify gateway, it's an option on your website at checkout. PayPal inherently has a 2.9% transaction fee, but if you're offering it through the Shopify gateway, it's an extra 2% on top of that. So any transaction that someone uses PayPal to pay for on your website is going to be 4.9% transaction fee, which is a lot. Now, luckily, the vast majority of transactions are going to come from credit cards. I would say, $100,000 a month, let's assume an average order value of $2,500, which is generally what I have seen over the course of my time as a high-ticket dropshipper. Depends on the industry. That's 40 transactions. In that 40, I would say 35 of them are going to be paid for using credit card on average. So just doing some math here. Assume average order value of $2,500. 35 times $2,500 times the 2.9%. At the end of the month, that's going to be $2,573.50. And then the remaining 5 out of the 40, 5 times 2,500 times 4.9%, that's $612.50. And again, not a huge number when we're considering $100,000 in revenue, but it's not negligible. I mean, it's still an expense that you're not netting at the end of the month. So taking both of these numbers into account, we'll say roughly 3.2% of revenue is going to go towards transaction fees between credit cards and PayPal. What that's done to our pie chart, what this pie chart is assuming is you have a 50-50 split of SEO and ad spend. Again, all of this can vary with your discretionary expenses like shipping and ad spend. But in this case, we've got a remaining 15% of net profit that you can get from a 50-50 split of SEO and ad spend. You're spending $5,000 on ads. The other half of your revenue is coming from SEO. So total net profit, $100,000 in revenue. Cost of goods sold, $70,000. Shipping, $6,500. Ad spend, $5,000. Transaction fees, $3,200. Net profit of $15,300. The thing I want to emphasize here is this is a really, really just rough example trying to take in all factors. And like I've mentioned multiple times, your cost of goods sold really isn't going to move. This is kind of the set in stone thing. The rest of this, minus transaction fees, shipping and ad spend, these are where you're going to really find the difference in your margins. Do you charge shipping? Do you charge flat rate? Do you not charge shipping at all? Ad spend. Are you really just trying to organically rank over the course of time? Do you want this to be a truly risk-free business where you're not putting any money into it minus your Shopify expenses, which is, again, $50 to $100 a month? Because when revenue comes in from there, you use it to pay for all these other things, cost of goods sold, shipping, and transaction fees. It's up to you whether or not you want to spend money on ads. So average net profit at the end of the month on $100,000 can be anywhere from $5,000 all the way up to $24,000, $23,000, depending on the industry, depending on the margins. So I hope this is a good visual representation. Again, let's assume $15,000 per month. That's what, $180,000 at the end of the year. So it's a pretty damn good income, just assuming $100,000 per month. Half of your traffic is coming from ad spend. The other half is coming organically. It's going to be even more on the same amount of revenue if you're only ranking organically. That's just the power of this whole business model here. So if you haven't already subscribed for really objective high-ticket dropshipping content like this, if this was valuable to you and you're someone that is looking to start an online business, you don't have a lot of upfront capital, you have no experience, high-ticket dropshipping is maybe the most reliable and most lucrative business model, especially for beginners, but really anyone that is an online entrepreneur. If this describes you, if you're someone that is actually interested in doing this, I recommend checking out our program. The link is in the description below. And let me know in the comments what it is you guys want me to talk about on this channel next. And we'll see you in the next one.